You're thinking about podcasts wrong. In today's episode of Chew the Fat, I'm going to talk to you about how I think about podcasting from a very different angle. It's about guest experience. And through focusing on how you make the guest feel in an interaction is going to help through time build perception into reality, which will be an incredible funnel for your business or your personal brand. We're going to be doing it over these tasty little steak tacos that Kai's absolutely frothing to get stuck into. Let's go. I've got a theory at the moment where a lot of people are thinking about producing a podcast and their focus is all around the thumbnail, the clicks, how many views they're getting. And they're really focused on the audience. Now, don't get me wrong, that is critically important. And everything I do, I want to make sure I'm delivering value to the audience. But they're missing a really important gap, which I believe is the true power of the podcast. In today's episode of Chew the Fat, a bite-sized version, I'm going to talk about my theory, and I want you to shoot holes in it. I'm going to be doing it over these really simple little beef tacos. Let's get stuck in. Now, as I said, a lot of people are focused around that audience piece. And I believe that over time, this will solve itself. And I just don't know if that's the first right thing to think about. Now, of course, you want to have an audience great enough that you can attract guests. You don't want to be doing the podcast, and get 3 views because you're not creating any value for the guest. But I think once you have a certain number, whether it be a few hundred views, whether it be a couple thousand, always continually focusing on that and missing about the guest experience, I think you're missing a big gap. So let me talk about the guest experience. When I have a guest on Chew the Fat, I'm thinking continuously about what is the experience from the moment they first hear from me, they walk through the door, and they have that sit-down conversation for an hour. So as you know about Chew the Fat is I cook the guest food every single time, and it ties into my mission. But there's part of the reason that I've never talked about is around this experience. Because if I have someone that walks through my door, and for me, I do it in my home, and the first thing I'm doing is I'm almost breaking bread. I'm creating a service to them. I have spent the time to make them their favorite meal. That's my request to them. And we now sit down over a conversation where we're having food together. The reason I do that is because immediately we are building rapport. Because for the audience, I want to showcase a conversation that has, the feeling of, chemistry, if I can use that word. It's got to feel, it feels like 2 people that have known each other for a long time are having a chat. And I know if we have that conversation over food and we start and I'm serving them, I'm in a really good position to start that. The next thing is a kind of a psychological principle behind that. There's a rule called the rule of reciprocity. And we use this in sales all the time, which is when you do something for someone, there is a sense of indebtedness. They feel like they owe you. Now, I don't do that as a form of manipulation, right? But it's more around like if I'm doing this for you, if I'm serving you, they're more likely to want to collaborate on the post after. They're more likely to want to share the good news story. So for me, I'm thinking about how do I double down on the experience for that guest? Because if I can have the goal of, when they leave this conversation, they go, that was the best podcast I've been part of. And so part of that is like, what is the equipment that you're using? I've been through different podcasts where you come in and people look a bit disheveled. They're using iPhones. They don't look like they're taking it very seriously. They feel like it's an afterthought. And immediately your experience is like, oh, am I wasting my time? And that will come out in the conversation because I'm not going to bring the same energy I would where I'm like, wow, this person is really delivering. So for us, the way I work with Kai is like, it's all these little details around, the cold water that's in front of them, the seat and the position for them. It's the cameras, making sure that the cables are tidy. These little 1% details from an experience point of view will make a big psychological impact. And again, by creating that amazing experience, I'm hoping to create a raving fan that is more likely to share the content, and that's where I believe the audience piece will spill over. Here's the next thing. Doing Chew the Fat, I've now sat down with about 50 guests, right? From all different walks of life, all different calibers, different countries. You're talking people that have sold their company for $1 billion, athletes at the highest levels, Olympians. I'm getting to have conversations that I wouldn't normally get to have. So, let's use a great example. Had I not had a podcast and I called someone up who sold their company for $1 billion and I say, hey, do you want to sit down for an hour and a half? The reality is they're like, why? What's in it for me is a completely normal thing to think about, especially when your time is worth a lot of money. So by having a podcast, I have value to deliver them. The value is, I'm going to be able to showcase your story, your brand, your message. We're going to do it in an exceptionally good way. The editing is going to be incredible and you're going to be proud of what we're delivering. But I'm now going to have an hour and a half conversation with someone. And these people over time, as long as I'm nurturing that and like we're getting along, I've been going back, having lunches, flying to Melbourne to meet people. Like, I'm doing this consistently because, like, hey, that's a really good person, incredible having the network, and I actually enjoy spending time with them. The power of that is far greater than the power of just a few extra 100 views. So what I mean by that is, like, let's say you have the most optimized thumbnail, but you're not worrying about the networking piece. The reality is I could have a few thousand more views, but also I could have a conversation with someone that might be the next business opportunity. They can open a door, I can open a door for them. We can do something special together that far outweighs what that extra few thousand views can do. And so building a network is really powerful through podcasts. And so, like, how you treat the guest, how you follow up afterwards, I believe is incredibly important. The next element is, like, personal learning. There is so much content out there, right, around, like what we're doing with Chew the Fat, content on, how to do business, how to perform at a higher level, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But something about being in the room with someone and having that conversation over the food or having that conversation after the podcast, there's a lot of learning that's gonna be had. Like, I've learned so much and seen so many people perform at a completely different level and do things in a completely different way for me in business, and I'm learning so much. And so if you think about the experience for you as the podcastee in a business, think about also that value getting from the learning element. I have a really cool example, right? I got reached out to by a company called Rival. And Rival, the founder and CEO, Dane Walker. Now, Dane invited me on his podcast. That was our first interaction. I sit down, we spend an hour and a half together. I'm doing the Eat with Purpose cookbook. And I was like, I need a branding agency. And from that one conversation, I reach out and go, hey, like, what would it cost to do the branding? Before you know it, I'm now a $60,000 client to them. They've done an incredible job. But I thought about it last week. I was like, what a powerful way as a business, if you're like, I have something to sell, I know it's good. I reach out to people as guests. I have value to deliver through the podcast. And through that connection, I can actually now start to sell. I'm like, think about it, extrapolate that out for hundreds of guests, hundreds of opportunities to talk about business. Like, that's a sales funnel. And so that is a really powerful way to think about a podcast beyond just the couple of thousand views. Like, again, if you're monetizing a YouTube channel and you're getting a few $1,000s, or, in Dane's example, he got one client at 60 grand, and I'm one of whatever number of guests he's had so far. Wow. And I don't know if that was the intention, and that's fine. Like, you don't want to do things and have like the smell of intention on your breath, but it's still powerful and can still happen either way. The next one is the podcast, and the reason the power behind it is really important is because a podcast often is a longer form piece of content. So for me, on average, I'm on about 45 minutes. The data behind Spotify and YouTube shows that my retention rate is roughly 65% to the end. So I now have the attention of people for 65% of 45 minutes. Let's call that 27 minutes or 30 minutes, whatever. Quick maths, probably wrong. That's a lot of brain time to be having of someone. We're in the attention economy. Yeah, getting people's attention is one of the most important assets we can do and have. And so the podcast, like, even if your numbers are small, like, the reality is my Instagram gets far more views. Like, wow, amazing. I got 200,000 views on a reel. Incredible. You look behind that reel and you go, on average, I got 19 seconds worth of attention. So it's an equation. 200,000 times 19 seconds is the total amount of brain space that I've captured, compared to that podcast where every person on average is listening for like 32 minutes. You don't have to have big numbers to truly make an impact. And I believe there's something very different fundamentally from someone who's sitting at home, doom scrolling and flicking and just captures 19 seconds of your time and then just moves on, compared to someone who's like week by week by week locked into you as an individual. That is a far more powerful way, in my opinion, to build personal brand. And so as I wrap that all up and I finish this little taco, which I'm super excited to bite into, I think about it like this. If you focus on and understand that, hey, it's okay you're getting 300 views or 1,000 views and it's not huge, but you understand that by providing that incredible guest experience, which helps you get new and better guests, the perception will turn into the reality. That's my current hypothesis. I couldn't yet tell you because I don't have a Stephen Bartlett or a Modern Wisdom, but it's like, I think those different elements will help you get there and think about it in a different way. And this is the reality. I think it's something like 90% of podcasts don't go past episode 20, and of those, 90% don't go past episode 40. Why? Because people give up. And why do they give up? I reckon it's based on the views, because people go like, it's a lot of effort to get 200 people listening. So I'm trying to help you reframe, actually, don't think about it purely from the views standpoint. Think about the power holistically, and that hopefully helps you stay in the game. And let's see if my theory is right. Does this compound and the perception turn into reality over time? We'll find out one day.